Hello and welcome to the program. I am Suren. If one can recall, we were talking about my own personal experiences with Jehovah's Witnesses. They call their organization as God's Spirit-guided governing body. Well, rather, they have called it that way. Examine their history without ignoring the real truth, and then consider the tragic stories of people who had unique experiences whilst adhering to their faith, rejected, excommunicated, ignored, judged as wrongdoers and sinners. After befriending with them, and when people decide to leave their organization or are removed by decree of their so-called judicial committee for their supposed transgressions of questioning the Spirit, many are rendered lonely, miserable, and suicidal. Psychological studies show that such mental disorders are more common amongst Jehovah's Witnesses. Remember, we are living in a world where there are conflicts created by men, and people kill each other, either by their swords or word of mouth. Are supposedly peace-loving witnesses any different? Is it a godly practice to destroy others? Jesus supposedly teaches us to love one another, yet many witnesses I met over the years claim that Jesus came not to bring peace, but the sword. One is urged to question if that is what they are practicing. Can one really consider the teachings of witnesses as equal to Christ's? When there can be no true peace and genuine love, but only the sword, as they claim, there can only be separations and violence. There can therefore neither be peace nor any goodness with Jehovah's Witnesses. They believe that Jesus is Archangel Michael with a flaming sword in his right hand. If you are religiously inclined, you must know that they are the false prophets, not doing God's will, but rather that of the one who opposes all light. This part may be a little painful for Jehovah's Witnesses. In this I shall most certainly agree with other apostates who are ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, presenting the painful reality of their experiences on social media. We need more people like them to talk freely to those who are free to think and be. In those courageous presentations, the witnesses are encouraged to wake up. I can only admire their standpoint and the way they present their findings about Jehovah's Witnesses, but I wonder if the witnesses are permitted to watch them and hearken to reason and truth. The apostates often make mention of John chapter 15, verses 8 to 10, where it is written, "My Father is glorified in this, if you observe my commandments. You will remain in my love, just as I have observed the commandments of the Father and remain in his love. The Watchtower magazine, dated March 15th, 1989, page 28, contains these words: "The fruit of love is evident among Jehovah's Witnesses." I discovered a number of apostates who consider these pointers, specifically speaking of important issues regarding Jehovah's Witnesses. They make mention of several young teenagers being abused by a number of their elders who are supposedly appointed by Jehovah. And as we know that this is not a new story, for it happens all the time. One elder had been imprisoned for a period of time, but many others had not been reported to the police. For although other elders had known about the abuse, they were allegedly repentant. Let us remember that the witnesses apply their two-witness rule, and most certainly sweep the case under the carpet. Another abuse case concerning a violent husband against his wife and children was concluded by the elders, declaring that the wife was in need to become a better one. The witnesses tend to punish the victim, not the perpetrator. You would never know if you are talking to a criminal or pedophile when they visit you. Considering the problems in regard to blood transfusions, which Jehovah's Witnesses never allow, many young and old have unnecessarily lost their lives. Imagine a mother having a brain hemorrhage and refusing a life-saving transfusion, thus leaving her children motherless. This is a true story, and similar tragedies have happened throughout the years. I was also nearly a victim of the same. Paul Blizzard and his wife's story is noteworthy because they kicked the witnesses out of the hospital and allowed a blood transfusion to save their daughter's life. It eventuated in them being disfellowshipped for not obeying Jehovah's commandment as issued forth by the governing body, watching their daughter die. This is the expected pattern for them to observe. However, it can be seen in the light of human sacrifice, similar to that one discovers within ancient satanic practices. A 15-year-old after a nasty car crash and a 14-year-old leukemia sufferer have died after refusing blood transfusions. The apostates also point to another problem with the witnesses in regard to shunning former members. A number of ex-witnesses have committed suicide after being shunned by their only friends from within their congregations and families. One woman committed suicide after being thrown out of their organization due to her addiction to smoking. Another well-known case is that of James Olson, who died having thrown himself off the Brooklyn headquarters after being negatively forced by his parents to go back after he tried to resign. Remember the words in the Watchtower magazine? The fruit of love is evident among Jehovah's Witnesses. But the evidence proclaims otherwise. After all, the experiences many like myself had, my advice to the witnesses is to wake up to the fact that theirs is not God's organization. It is not spirit-guided and not inspired of God. We read within Jesus' words, "You will know them by their fruit." All their prophecies have been proved to be false, and the world did not end on the dates they predicted, like May 22nd, 2012, for instance. Jehovah's Witnesses consider every disfellowshipped person as their enemy and shun them. Unfortunately, this is part of their worship and also my story. What about Jesus' intimate words? Love your enemies. Remember that he said unto his disciples, as we read in the Bible, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but by me." John chapter 14, verse 6. Only recently we have discovered that the Watchtower had joined the UN. There are a few video interviews available on social media where some Jehovah's Witness elders decline to answer the questions posed to them. And yet we are constantly told that they would never join the world's politics, nor be a part of Babylon the Great, i.e. UN. In their congregations, members are told the world is controlled by the all-powerful Satan. Therefore, they are encouraged to think that the entire political system belongs to him. One can only urge people to think for themselves, to take note carefully and intently to what is considered here. Personally, I am one of those who love life and entire humanity unconditionally. One hopes that you will consider what is being said so far without any bias and prejudice. Everything presented here is on an as-is basis, without blaming anybody and remaining truthful because my story is actual and real, although presented like a fantasy. It's a resume of my life's story in regard to Jehovah's Witnesses and my unfortunate involvement with them. It is not presented to be judgmental against anybody or to paint some people as wicked. Indeed, the witnesses are extremely judgmental people, painting anybody and everybody as wicked, but are incapable of seeing it, while groping in cultist darkness. They could not refrain from considering me as an evil and wicked person while helping my ex-wife break all family ties. Even today, she would attempt to paint me as the rejected of God at every opportunity, advising her son and daughter not to involve their father in important issues as she sees fit, as it was then. I have enough evidence to support this, while admittedly I would never consider her in the same way she classified me under Jehovah's Witness dictums. I love all humanity. If you are a practicing Jehovah's Witness, take note of what is being said here. Although you would be discouraged and barred from discovering the real truth by visiting any of the social media sites on the World Wide Web, or lending libraries if you like. Frankly, I would consider it a miracle if any of the witnesses and their supporters would read or listen to this note or literature written without bias, presented without bias, but on an as-is basis. I would like to congratulate any witnesses who are curious to read or listen to my account open-mindedly. If you are a non-Jehovah's Witness and want to know all about them, again without any prejudice or bias, you are welcome to consider my programs as well as that of other apostates like the ones on social media. Therein you will discover a few hidden truths about what the witnesses really preach and do. One thing is certain: they have stolen a large chunk of my youth. Yet I have survived, like many others. Knowing what I know, I decided to tell you a few facts in regards to myself and the witnesses, using a number of Bible texts, encouraging you to think independently and discover what you are dealing with if you are tempted to study a cult of Jehovah's Witnesses. I'm not interested in complaining about and painting someone evil as they did to me, and only intend to offer you some friendly advice as an assumed ex-member of their organization who is shunned by all my witness friends, including my wife and children, being treated like a criminal, indeed a wicked evildoer, for questioning the Spirit. I'm a professor of clinical psychology, and although retired, I still occupy myself helping anybody with their dilemmas in a limited fashion. I'm also a philosopher and an artist, teaching art and exhibiting my works worldwide. Hopefully, I am not seen as if bragging at this point. In addition, I conduct discussion groups on philosophical and scientific considerations. I am a person who ardently desires to see a happier world around me, and am not against any religious ideal or belief system, although I do not follow any particular order, but do question the existence of an esoteric Christian God and his supposed opposition, the devil. It is an issue of good and evil as considered throughout human history. I am intending to put some Jehovah's Witness attitudes under the microscope and let you be the judge. To do this, I will quote from the Jehovah's Witness publication, Awake, July 2014 issue, page 15, where one reads, "The true religion teaches the truth from God's Word, the Bible." John chapter 4, verse 24, and 17, verse 17 quotes, "God is a spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. Sanctify them through your truth. Your word is truth. This literature advises the reader that true religion helps people get to know God. John chapter 17, verses 3 to 6. This is life eternal, that they might know you, the only true God, and Jesus Christ whom you have sent. We also read in the Bible that God announces his name as being only I am that I am. True religion promotes unselfish love. John chapter 13, verse 15. For I have given you an example that you should do this as I have done to you. It teaches people to respect all races and nationalities, to avoid sharing in the wars of nations. Micah chapter 4, verse 14. The witnesses claim that true religion is a way of life, and its members practice what they preach. Romans chapter 2, verse 21, and 1 John chapter 3, verse 18. You therefore who teaches another, do you not teach yourself? You who preach a man not to steal, do you steal? Really? Jehovah's Witnesses, how can you even mention something like this? Was it not you, having stolen a large chunk of people's lives, kicking them out without understanding their dilemmas and leading them to commit suicide? My little children, let us not love in word, neither in tongue, but in deed and in truth. Do you, Jehovah's Witnesses, really love your brothers in deed and to truth as you preach? John chapter 13, verse 35. By this all will know that you are my disciples, if you have love among yourselves. Hebrews chapter 10, verses 24, 25 mentions, let us consider one another as to incite to love and fine works, not forsaking our meeting together. Are Jehovah's Witnesses truly practicing what they preach? Have you ever been shunned by your family and friends? Have you ever been kicked out of an organization wherein you were loved only as long as you danced to their drumming and afterwards felt abandoned, lonely, and suicidal? Many former Jehovah's Witnesses have experienced it after being judged and disfellowshipped. This trend is more evident when they are met by active witnesses and treated as if they do not exist. I too had my share of this treatment. Is it not ironic to hear them advise you on how to deal with your loss, your innermost emotions, your agony and stresses? They always quote from the Bible, pointing at the text you can read in Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verses 1 to 4. There is time to weep. Maybe they need to consider that there is also a time to crumble for their worldwide organization of absolute evil. The so-called apostates do not need to apologize for their unbiased observations of the real truth. Interestingly, the witnesses advise you to avoid isolating yourself, yet their dogmatic rules isolate you from life. They advise you not to take everything said by others too seriously. Do not take heart every word that people say, as in Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verse 21. This is also an interesting point to consider. The majority of them take the gossiped untruths more seriously than the truth itself. They consider the Bible advice on the dead that they are going to be resurrected. However, they believe that God will resurrect only those faithful witnesses. And the rest of humanity, like the disfellowshipped, will be ushered into everlasting damnation and complete annihilation. For Jehovah is righteous. They advise you to pray to God for wisdom to deal with your circumstances, for God will pay attention to prayer of the destitute. Psalm chapter 102, verse 17. However, the Bible does not encourage its readers to pray to a false god or an organization of falsehood and treachery. Does one need to be utterly miserable and destitute for God to take note of the situation? According to what we are advised by the witnesses, prayer helps us to draw close to God. When we often express our feelings to God, we apparently develop a closer friendship with Him. According to James chapter 4, verse 8. 1 Chronicles chapter 28, verse 9 says, "If you search for the Lord, He will let Himself be found by you." The witnesses would allegedly help you find the invisible God, teaching you that God is love and that Jesus advises you to love your enemies. If, however, you are disfellowshipped, you are always considered as the enemy of God and therefore classified as the enemy of God's supposed organization on earth, namely the Watchtower Society. You are forever shunned as an evildoer by all your alleged friends and family. In reality, you are hated forever. Are the witnesses following God or the devil? Is it possible that perhaps they are doing the will of the opposer, for he has no mercy for sinners and conducts his witnesses into separations and heartaches? A father, wife, mother can willingly shun their partners, sons, daughters, brothers at ease and feel no emotion, for that is their religion. Let me be a little more specific. Jehovah's Witnesses would not listen to what their mouths utter or what is being said. Remember, the name of God was removed from the Old Testament for a reason, for a long time. But then the witnesses put it back into their version of the Bible. The name Jehovah appears about 6,000 times in their translation of the Holy Scriptures. The King James Version, as with others, uses the word Lord instead, in capital letters. But here's a problem. The God in the Old Testament is portrayed as jealous, wrathful, and angry, whereas Jesus speaks of his Father as being the God of love in the heavens. How can the God whose name was claimed to be Jehovah by the witnesses be the same as the God portrayed in the New Testament? Let us compare one of the texts which repeat in the Old Testament. 1 Chronicles chapter 21, verse 1 states, "And Satan stood up against Israel and provoked David to number Israel. And David said to Joab and to the rulers of the people, Go, number Israel from Beersheba even to Dan, and bring the number of them to me, that I may know it." 2 Samuel chapter 24, verses 1 and 2 states, "And again the anger of the Lord," in capital letters, "was kindled against Israel, and he moved to David against them to say, Go, number Israel and Judah. For the king said to Joab, the captain of the host, which was with him, Go now through all tribes of Israel, from Dan even to Beersheba, and number ye the people, that I may know the number of the people." Here we discover that the Lord is the same individual as Satan. The Lord, in capital letters, has also been replaced by the witnesses to read as Jehovah instead. There are numerous texts to consider describing Jehovah as an angry and jealous God, and if the witnesses are correct, then logically this God can only be evil. It is written in Judges chapter 9, verses 23 to 25. "Then God sent an evil spirit between Abimelech and the man of Shechem. And the man of Shechem dealt treacherously with Abimelech." God sent an evil spirit does not sound right for a God of love and righteousness, does it? If we take the Bible as literally as the witnesses describe, then what we read in 1 Kings chapter 22, verses 20 to 23 shows clearly that the God of the Old Testament is a destroyer, and yet at the same time a God of love. I know that if any of their members would question the elders on these issues of great concern, they would only be shunned and disfellowshipped them. Maybe they should consider Jeremiah chapter 8, verse 8, where we read, "How do ye say, we are wise, and the law of the Lord is with us? Lo, certainly in vain made he it. The pen of the scribes is in vain." When the shunned suffer great emotional pain and extreme stress and commit suicide, Jehovah's Witnesses feel nothing. Is that spiritual? Why would anyone pretend to believe in the absolute impossible? The truth is that those who shun their friends, fathers, sons, and wives, appear to have no feelings, for they know not that God would never cause such evil to anybody. Are they therefore created in the image of God, or fooled into feeling this way? The word God is derived from the Teutonic word for good, and it stands for all things good, all things loving and wholesome. Destruction and enmity are the products of an evil force. In John chapter 13, verse 35, we read what the good Lord says, "By all this you will know that you are my disciples." In the Christian way of understanding God is love. God is righteous and God is forgiving. All Christians speak of the same. Jehovah's Witnesses additionally speak of the importance of imitating God's loving, reasonable, and consistent discipline, and advise parents that their efforts will benefit their children. One can read it all in their Watchtower magazines. I will now ask, after they kicked me out and destroyed my family, what have they done to discipline my children? Proverbs chapter 22, verse 6 says, "Train a boy in the way he should go. Even when he grows old, he will not depart from it." But that does not imply abusing your child by forever beating him, sending him to bed without food, and reminding him many days later about his wrongs, and punishing him severely by perhaps breaking wooden spoons on his buttocks, as my wife used to do. And some Jehovah's Witness parents have been doing so for ages. And I can confidently say that they still do. Nor should we forget that many children have been abused by the appointed elders throughout the years. My ex-wife was an excessively harsh disciplinarian. What evil force or God would delight in inflicting pain on children or adults? Is it truly God inspiring them to do so, or the other one? Magda endlessly claimed that she was precisely following the advice given, as in the Watchtower magazine of July 1st, 2014, page 12. Effective discipline is founded on love. When faced with a difficult situation, postpone discipline until you are calm. It does not say to beat your son to death and desperation, but it indicates to talk to your son calmly. It may be written to advise the parent to consider a child's limitations. It also encourages the parent to be consistent. If you have warned the child that a certain form of discipline will follow, if he misbehaves, then be sure to follow through. My ex-wife used to warn our children that if they did not pray before meals, next time they would have no food. Not wanting to look foolish in front of the other people, she warned them that she would punish them when they were home. She most certainly followed through the advice given when they had already forgotten all about it, thus leading them to always feel apprehensive and fearful in front of their mother, resorting to tell lies to gain favor in her eyes. This taught them to become very pretentious. Perhaps this way, my supposed daughters were helping themselves to feel better and above everybody else. That's a fact. I could not tell Magda anything, for she treated me like a low kind of person and never tried to listen to reason. As a real Christian mother, her methods of teaching the children never had to be questioned, especially after being thrown out of their organization for having questioned this spirit. I was seen as a great sinner, unworthy to be considered as a human being and a father. She often shouted at me in front of our children, "Go behind me, Satan." Was this the type of discipline they were advised to follow? According to Proverbs chapter 4, 1 and 2, Jehovah's Witnesses claim to teach that discipline is not just another word for punishment. It is related to instruction, education, and correction, and never connected with abuse or cruelty. I wonder what my ex-wife has learned since then. In this same magazine on page 7, one reads, "The Bible clearly tells us what Jehovah and his Son Jesus Christ will do about the sufferings caused by Satan the devil. For this purpose, the Son of God was made manifest, to break up the works of the devil," as we read in 1 John chapter 12, verse 31. That may be why, in their limited capacity of thinking, the witnesses break up families and destroy the lives of individuals by shunning them. Obviously, Christ will stop the sufferings caused by the devil by stopping the witnesses. According to their teachings, without Satan's influence, a righteous new world will be established, and this earth will become a peaceful place, as in 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 13. One wonders if, after all the sufferings they habitually cause, will Jehovah's Witnesses, who are also a part of the humanity they hate, be around to see that new order of things they preach about? Proverbs 2, verses 21 and 22 states, "Only the upright will reside in the earth, and the blameless will remain in it. As for the wicked, they will be cut off from earth, and treacherous will be torn away from it." Obviously, they believe it does not include them. Indeed, God, the all-good, cannot remove the gift of free will, making humans into robots. But the witnesses live by the rules and regulations set and dictated by their organization, just like automated slaves anyway, don't they? I shall leave this with you for now, until we meet again. In the meantime, keep smiling and be happy. Thank you.